Welcome to Get to Know with me, Morgan Williams. I've been in the creative industry for over a decade and meet people in different roles every day. But here's my secret. I don't always know what it is they actually do. So here I am getting to know. Each week, I sit down with industry insiders, learning what it is they actually do all day long. Whether you're trying to break into the industry, feeling a little bit lost, or just plain curious, Get to Know is here to dish out creative career insights and advice. So let's dive right into this episode. This week, I get to know Harry Rose, the founder of Darwin Studio, a new model of photo agency. Harry and I met over a decade ago at university where we were both studying photography. Over the years, Harry realised he didn't want to be behind the camera anymore, but part of the team that gets photographers those gigs. Today, he shares amazing insights into the world of photography agents, how he started Darwin, and building a community of creatives. If you're interested in photography, but don't want to be the one taking the photos, this one's for you. So thanks for joining me today, Harry. Really nice to have you on.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for inviting me. It's been ages since we last properly spoke. So yeah.
I know, because when did we literally about 10 years ago we graduated now.
Yeah, so it's 10 years this month. I don't know when.
But yeah, it's been a really long time. But nice to reconnect anyway.
Yes.
And you've obviously been doing really cool things with Darwin Studio that I really want to talk about. But first of all, can you actually introduce yourself and what Darwin Studio is?
Okay, so my name's Harry. I'm the head of photography and founder at Darwin Studio. And Darwin Studio is a photo agency that looks after lots of really unique creatives, mainly in the UK, but some global as well. And we're essentially like a new model of photo agency on how we look after and represent talent, and how we go about working with creatives and find creatives and work on jobs with them. So yeah, we're sort of this new sort of like voice that's been going on for like 2 to 3 years. I don't count the pandemic, so I keep telling people it's 2 years old. So yeah, so 2 years. So yeah, technically it's really 2 years old. But we've been really sort of properly going at it. So yeah, we've been it's just a really fun, inclusive, supportive space where I'm really privileged enough to work with some amazing artists and do some exciting projects with them. So yeah.
Awesome. So when was it that you actually started, like when did you have the idea for Darwin Studio? Because I know you had a magazine back in uni called Darwin as well.
Yeah, so it literally kind of happened, it happened whilst in lockdown. I think it was kind of like sort of March time, 2020. I kind of, Darwin has kind of like come back and gone away in different forms. It was originally a self-published magazine, like you said, that had like 7 issues, which was really, it was stocked all over Europe, and it was a really like exciting thing. It was ahead of the kind of curve of like self-published indie mags before they kicked off, like all the kind of bigger titles that people know about now. Like Darwin was out before them, like doing this kind of thing, and it was just because I just loved photography and photographers, and I wanted to find ways of working with them. So come sort of pandemic, I left a photo agency, mainly because this is like, who was commissioning photography in a pandemic? No one. I mean, photo agencies and everyone in the creative industry found it incredibly tough because everything just stopped. And then I decided, I was having lots of conversations with photographers. A lot of my friends are photographers. I don't really go a day without talking to a photographer or a producer or creative director, because I'm thankfully friends with people who are lucky enough to do that. And I kind of got the impression that a lot of photographers are finding it really, really tough. And I kind of thought to myself, what could I do? That I was like, I wanted a break from doing any work. I wanted a break. It's the pandemic. I was like, no one's going to judge me for being like, not working or having a job or, shouting about what I'm up to, because no one's really doing anything. So it was good. So I spent some time. I was like, well, let's start a mentorship program. let's kind of let's find announce it on Darwin at the time, Darwin Magazine's sort of platform, and let people know this is a thing. And it was a real sense of helping photographers like learn how to pitch, build their portfolios, work out budgets and costs, and all the kind of things that you kind of don't get taught at university, because not every photographer at a university is gonna go and shoot full time and that's be their world. So it was essentially, what could you do what could I do from my desk at home? What could actually benefit people and be like a valuable thing? So I did that mentorship program for like 3 months, and I kind of just went, you know what? I just really love working with some of these artists, and I think that it should become. And I set up someone else's photo agency at that time whilst I was doing it. They gave me a call and was like, "Oh, could you do this for me?" Because I've set up creative agencies in the past for back when I worked at the British Journal of Photography. And I was like, okay, I can do this for you. This is fine. This is how it should work. And I basically built out like what I wanted to do for myself, but for someone else. And then kind of like everyone who knew me turned around and went, why have you done this? You've essentially made yourself a competitor. And you should have just done this yourself. And a lot of it came from confidence. A lot of it came from a place of, I've always felt like the other, or not fitted in, or never felt fully comfortable in the industry. So I wanted to so I was like, right, Darwin has been around for like 7-8 years ish. People kind of know who we are, like everyone knows what we're about. So I should take everything about the magazine in print and what the publishing side of it really believed in, and basically just evolve that into a photo agency. And I really like the name Darwin because I was like, oh, evolution, and it can change over time. And that's the kind of, at first people kind of thought it was like, survival of the fittest. That was some of the feedback I got while I was at uni. I was like, that's not really what it's about. And it's really, and it's evolved into this thing where it's essentially, Darwin really is a reflection upon my experiences in the creative industry and me saying, right, I actually don't want to relive any of that, and I would love to make something that is inclusive and supportive and really celebrates and works closely with the artists. So it grew into a photo agency. We've been working for 2 to 3 years, and kind of like lots of challenges. It's really scary launching your own agency.
I bet, yeah.
So a lot of it was just fear of like, what if it doesn't work? And then everyone was like, well, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Like it's not a big issue if it doesn't. So yeah, and it was a real. It's kind of grown now into a really exciting place for photographers and creatives to kind of essentially be represented by me, and it's a lot of there's a lot of work and a lot of kind of collaboration between me and the artist. I know photographers who are represented by various agencies and they don't really hear from their agent. Whereas my photographers, God forbid, they have to have me all the time. They have to tapping them, emailing them, asking for things, like discussing like what approaches, and really being as collaborative and because you want people to succeed. And where I think a lot of photo agencies models are essentially wealthy person sets up photo agency, has a lot of wealthy contacts, finds other wealthy photographers, puts them on an agency, bank a load of cash. That's the photo agency model. And anyone who kind of says, "Oh no, it's not," it is, and it kind of has always been like that. It's been a play. I mean, the creative, as you and pretty much everyone knows, the creative industry is a playground for the rich, really. And it kind of made me go, well, hang on, can we not work with different creatives and bring different voices to the forefront and bring real talent forward? People who wouldn't, not necessarily these people would never get an opportunity, but they would have to be extremely well connected, have a lot of loads of commercial work behind them already to even get looked at. And it's kind of the chicken and the egg situation I get so many messages from creators being like, how do I get commercial work? How do I get on? Because everyone's saying to me, oh, call us back when you've shot something and you've got something. I was like, well, if they're not you don't give them something. If you don't give them something to shoot, how are they going to shoot it? You know. So yeah, I kind of felt that there's so much kind of gatekeeping and challenges breaking talent through. And a lot of the time, the industry is. I was thinking this actually earlier today when I was doing a bit of gardening, because that's what I kind of do when my ADHD kicks in. When I've got a meeting, sometimes for like an hour before, just like in the garden, just plodding around, drinking one tea. And I noticed, and I'm sure a lot of people did, when there was the Me Too movement and Black Lives Matter, the creative industry just knee-jerked and went, oh, right, we're going to find loads of women now. And oh, no, we're going to work loads of black creatives now. And then I was like, okay, cool. And then it went forward. But then you looked at where those women and black creators were from, and you're like, oh, so we're only working with, privileged, wealthy people in West London. We're not actually going to work with, some black creative who grew up on an estate, or, a woman from, like, people from different backgrounds or different spaces. Are we just going to find, a different skin color and gender to what you already have been working with? And I kind of, it made me feel a bit gross when that all stuff was, you saw the reactions from clients as well, and everywhere. And it kind of made me feel, well, actually, we do need to, like, there needs to be like an photo agency that actually, we work with people because they're talented, and we think, we really support what their voice is, and what they want to do, both professionally and personally as well, like their personal projects, stories they want to tell, things they want to do, things they believe in, and sort of champion them. And it's really interesting kind of balancing those things from a business perspective, but also through a sort of moralistic and kind of wanting to change things like for the better. But that's kind of like where Darwin is at the moment, which is quite a nice place.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask, like, what's the mission of Darwin Studio? And I guess just from what you've said, it seems, tell me if I'm wrong, that it's about, creating a really diverse pool of creatives in the industry, but not just diverse in terms of, like, gender and ethnicity. It's about getting people who maybe aren't from those wealthy backgrounds, don't necessarily have the opportunities in the industry, and bringing them into the forefront and like allowing them to have those opportunities. Is that right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's pretty much that, but kind of never talking about the big diversity word. I had a conversation with some producers recently, and they were like, well, if we hear the word diversity, a lot of clients think, oh, we can go in cheap, because we can be seen as giving them a platform. And, we're really helping out because we're working with diverse talent. Look at the opportunity. So we're not going to pay you as much because look what we're doing as well. We're giving you work. We're kind of moving away. It's one of those things where we do it, but we're not kind of talking about diversity.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the more you talk about it, the less people care. And then people go, oh God, yeah, like, diversity, like, but then people raise the question, oh, are you working with diverse just because they're diverse rather than because they're talented? And that then kind of gets like brought up a lot. And we're essentially taking a slight pivot and saying we're an inclusive community, and we just empower artists, and we love storytelling. And that's what it always should be about. But there's so much other loaded stuff that goes on behind the scenes at these places where you're kind of just like, oh my God. It's like you kind of just like your eyes kind of water a bit, and you're like, oh. So it's we're really about bringing, and it's not, and I don't pick or find photographers based on any of the kind of like above on like who they are and their background.
Mm-hmm.
For me, the storytelling and the ability to tell a story and having an aesthetic and a look that I can work with, because I've got a certain look that I like, or a standard, should I say? Like, and I can't really go below that. So a lot of the time it's like you work out lots of different things on how you can help people, and I get about 10 to 15 photographers emailing me every week about representation, and it's really hard because it's like, I try to respond to everyone because I generally think saying no to someone is better than not saying anything. And I say that to clients as well. It's like, and people have meetings with them, like, look, if you don't, if we're not right for you, then or if nothing's like just tell us honestly what it's like for you, like where you're at, because I'd much rather know and not send you another email and annoy you rather than, and it's better for everyone just to know where they stand. And I think we get a lot of photographers, and interesting enough, we get a lot of photographers from lots of diverse backgrounds, and we're getting a lot more photographers from a different class backgrounds as well, being like, I don't know if I can be in this industry because I don't see it. It doesn't reflect me. And that's kind of where we're at. I mean, I'm very aware that I'm from a middle class background. And if I'm someone from a middle class background, I'm saying, oh, the industry made me feel, like, common and poor and not like, and that sounds really bad to say it, but there's this snobbery that can go on and make you feel, kind of remove your worth as like, oh, you do not know this, haha, like that kind of mentality that kind of reduces your worth. And then I'm a bit like, well, if I'm coming from my background and feeling that, then holy fuck, how are other people feeling who aren't from my background and don't have the privilege that I have? So yeah, it's a really interesting thing, and I've met with some really amazing like clients and potential collaborators who are just like, they're like, this is a problem in this industry where, and sometimes it's not a case of, the photographer being the breaking through some boundaries and bringing different. Sometimes it's the crew, like it's who's on set. It's like who's the producer, who is everyone on set who's brought this project to life, and it's trying to kind of deconstruct that a little bit more. And people get always really worried about this because they kind of think that people are going to come and like take their jobs and move them out. And it's also it's a tightrope for me to walk as well, because I don't want everything that Darwin does to be about this, because I feel like we're a small voice in a very big pond of an industry. Luckily, there are other amazing production houses and creative agencies who I've worked with and I just speak to on a regular basis who are doing this as well, who are like, you know what, we see this all as like a problem and we want to change it and we want to bring more people up. And it really boils down to storytelling. And I think the more people kind of realize that it comes from just different perspectives and wanting to hear different stories and seeing how someone else would photograph something rather than the person who spent the last 15 years photographing the same client. And it's my job foremost is to represent my artists and really work with them closely. But also I kind of have to be aware of the landscape that we all work in, where we can do really positive change and show people how it should be done and really empower people and go, look, this is amazing, let's do more of it. And I think more people are paying attention. It's slowly kind of shifting that way. Sometimes a bit annoying when you're doing something and you know that you're waiting for the change to happen. You just sat there going, come on guys, let's better than what we have been. Yeah.
Well, I want to get into like the nitty-gritty of what it is that you do. So head of photography and founder of Darwin Studio. What exactly does that mean?
I mean, I really hate the term agent because it's so loaded, and people have such negative attitudes towards agents. And I often think if you have a really bad interaction with an agent, be it like an acting agent or a model agent, it's probably because the creative you're working with as well is difficult, and they're just feeding it back through them. So they're kind of like, you're the face of it. So I mean, as an agent side of things, so I essentially work really closely with my artists in terms of helping them with their portfolios and like filling gaps that might be potentially there, coming up with potential, seeing like brands that they want to work with and collaborate with, or creative agencies, approaching them, building like genuine like connections in those spaces, and creating visibility on their work, and then really supporting them from a personal level as well. Because when you're a creative, it's a reason why I studied photography, but I do not take pictures for anyone. I hate taking pictures. It drives me insane. The emotional kind of weight that comes with making something for someone, and it's you're pouring your personality in a bit, even if it's something that like is so far removed from you as an artist, but you're doing it because it's a really good opportunity. and the money's good as well. Obviously, like there's more reasons for doing something that you don't really particularly want to do, but it's it's still personal, and that is really, it's a really tough thing for creatives to go through. Whether you're a designer, painter, illustrator, it doesn't matter where you sit on the creative kind of like spectrum of your practice. So my job essentially really is to be the kind of like emotional buffer and support, and take the situation and be able, if it's like, working with a client, it might be challenging, or it might be a really stressful job and lots of kind of demands and wants from the artist. My job is really to basically take all the stress away and like absorb it all, so my creators feel really chilled out and have a good time, and feel that they don't have to take that on. And then also kind of I do all the negotiations with budget, usage, things my artists like to do on set in terms of like their crew they like to have, how they like to work, and anything my artist doesn't want to do, I have to kind of liaise and negotiate for a client and make it seem like it's me and not them. And I've had an idea, and it won't be my idea, it's what the artists want to do. So really being their voice and championing them, but doing it in a way that like all of my photographers, I trust all my photographers to like be in a room when they're making work in a studio and do an incredible job, and vice versa. They really trust me to be in those meetings and conversations to really champion them and bring forth like the best of their kind of work to really get people interested in working with them. And but also like I do a lot of production work with my photographers as well. Usually I'm producing most of the jobs I've done. I've been the producer as well, which I think actually is quite a fun thing to have. And it's one thing that like you usually get. It's not rare for a photo agency to have producers, but it's kind of a bit more rare to have someone who's working closely with those photographers day to day, and then you're on set with them and you're producing with them and art directing them a little bit. So yeah, it's a very kind of like, my job at Darwin is essentially doing everything in a very sort of thing. So we do it, and we do everything for the artists, and it's not just commercial work. It's grants that might come along. I spend a lot of time writing. I used to a lot of time writing. There hasn't been any grants recently. Writing up proposals for my artists. Sometimes it's quite hard when you're the person making the work. You can be like, it's a bit, and it's also come down to editing your work as well, as in like taking images out. I take pictures all the time, and I'm like, oh, I love this because of that, but then my boyfriend will be like, yeah, but it's not like this, so get rid of it. And I'm like, okay, cool. And that's my job as well, is essentially kind of like, show them what works, and I can have a detached sense, but also have a deep understanding of them as a creative and just how they want to do, where they want to grow, where they want to be. And you basically balance and juggle all those things and toe that line of being their friend, but also their colleague and agent. So it's a really kind of like, if you're like someone who likes to be behind the scenes on a lot of things and likes negotiating, but also loves that creative collaboration, but not the emotional burden of it. Like being in the photo agency, I think is a really good place for those people to be. And I think it's a really enjoyable job. And I think the best thing from it really is the photographers. I mean, when you spend ages on a brief with them and writing the treatment on their behalf, and a lot of the time photo agencies will ask photographers to go and write the treatment. Like, go write this treatment, come back to me with it, and I'll check it. But I write everything, design all the decks, do everything from scratch, because you learn over time how to speak like how they talk. And they do like a final edit of it, and obviously go pull things out which I say is absolute nonsense, or just me on a time. Which happens because I try to give them as much kind of like things we should talk about. So I do. Yeah, I like to be very hands-on and provide that kind of support and guidance, because sometimes some people do it, some people don't. So I want to be the people, the agency that does do it.
Yeah, sure. You said that you're like a new model of agency.
Mm.
So is that how it's a slightly different model?
Yeah, that's how it's a slightly different model, but also our contract with our artists is like I've looked at lots of different photo agency contracts. And a lot of them are kind of gross. Some of the rights, some of the percentage. I mean, most of them are 40% and up that I've seen, and I've had conversations with photographers who've worked at some big photo agencies from around the world and just been like, oh, like I want to get out of this, or like I'm stuck in this. What can I do? And I'm like, oh god, why? I'm like, why did you sign that? I was like, oh, it's a good opportunity. I was like, yeah, but is
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
So we have an agency model that essentially it has different kind of percentage agency fees based on working elements, like who brought the job in, what price bracket did it go over to go with this, and okay, then it's that. And there's essentially 4 different percentage fees that the agency model takes from the artist, and it's fully reflective of the work involved in that job. So one of my artists has been talking to a creative, because I encourage them all the time. I'm like, go talk to creative agencies, like have those meetings. Don't rely just on me all the time to do it, but you should do it as well. Like we should all be maximize the people doing. If we're all doing it, it ups the chance of someone actually seeing you and wanting to work with you. So we have different brackets based on who brings that job in and who nurtured that relationship and all those various bits and pieces. And that was a new model that I came up with. And recently, a few clients actually asked to see my contract with my photographers, which I've never been asked for before, and I don't know anyone. I asked a few people, and they're like, "What? That's really weird." But actually, I think it's like I kind of wanted to become the new norm because I think if people saw how much was being taken, or some of the contract people in, they go, "Oh my god!" And I showed it, and they were like, "This is really like good and supportive and collaborative." And I'm a bit like, "Well," I think like if anything in life, you can't just say it; you kind of have to action it as well. And I mean, hindsight from a business perspective. Like a big flat fee, and that's why people do it. But I'm also just like, but that's sometimes why you get a high turnover, or why you get people kind of like unhappy and a bit. I say misgruntled, but I don't even know if that's a word. But really kind of like fed up with where they are. So yeah, it also like it's spawned out of just wanting to like ensure artists in every job they're doing that they get the best fee they can get.
I guess if you're the photographer, but you feel like you're putting all the legwork in to get the jobs, then your agent taking 40% isn't worth it.
Yeah, it's gross, isn't it? And it happens.
Yeah,
It happens.
yeah, of course it happens. But let's talk a little bit about how you find those clients for your photographers to work with. What goes into that?
A lot of it, a lot of kind of research into who, if either they're a brand or a creative agency, figuring out kind of like who they are, the work that they're doing. Is there some alignment with what my photographer is doing? And sometimes that's really hard because a lot of people work a year in advance. They could be working on a campaign or a whole new thing that's completely opposite to what they did last year. You can go in and say, "Oh, we think we're really great for you," and then you go, "Oh, actually, no, we don't do anything like that anymore." Oh, okay. A lot of it is essentially, I think a lot of it boils down is to finding the people in those spaces that can really champion you and understand you as an agency and understand your artists and really want to work with you. I mean, a lot of there's photo agencies that have been going for the past 15, 20 years in the last, and some which are like 5 to 6 years old, that are so heavily ingrained and embedded in the creative industry that they will just get a phone call all the time from a creative agency that's on a 5 mil retainer from a brand. Cool, we're going to work with that people. And because it's kind of like, it's formulaic and they're used to doing it and it doesn't require any real, like, oh, am I taking a risk? Because whenever anyone does anything, they're thinking, is this going to make me look good? And I hate to boil it down to that, but a lot of the time is someone's working on a campaign, they're producing it, and creative director, they want to get more retainers from that client and more business. So everything they do has got to look good, and then they want to make sure that they're working in the same kind of like hands safe hands they've always been in, but safe hands isn't necessarily creative hands, you know? And I say it all the time, I'm like, just because they're safe hands doesn't mean it's the best hands to be working or the best people to be collaborating. Could you be doing something a bit more exciting or different with someone new? And some people are terrified by that. And there's some creative agencies which are very traditional and have always worked a certain way and always will. So what I'm really interested in is working with, I think since the pandemic hit, so many more agencies sprung up all over the UK and different, even around the world, in not near capital cities. There's one in Cornwall that's really great, called Baked. They're doing a lot of amazing work. And there's new ones up in Manchester and Leeds that are just sort of like coming around. And I think I want to be working with the people who, you know, those people, because I think those people really, you know, they're new, they're exciting, they want to do things differently, and they want to work with different talent and push different people through. And that for me is exciting, and I think that's kind of like where, to me, I think that's where the future of it all is heading. And yes, the big traditional creative agencies, which are billions of pounds of money stashed in them, they're never going to go away. They're always going to be there. That's great. They should do, because they do amazing work, and there's a reason why they are there. But it's like, how do you, when you're someone like Darwin, and you're literally the small guy, I'm like 5'5", how do you go into, how is like a short, stocky, queer kid from the countryside going to break it into a West London elite office with all these people who look at me and make a judgment, and they'll talk to me and go, oh, well, you've not done like everything under the sun, so I'm not too sure, you know? And it happened, and I've had it multiple times. So how I find people, I try to be really selective on who I approach. I feel like approaching every single person who might commission something under the sun and try and talk to them and get in a room with them and show them the work and all that, there's no point, because these people look at work all the time. And I also understand it that I sometimes get so overwhelmed with the amount of photographers and people asking me for opportunity that I'm like, oh my God, these people, like these agencies with these big budgets, they're just going, oh my God, like another photographer. And I imagine multiple times someone's seen my email and just clicked delete straight away because they're like, too much. I've done it in the past before. I've looked at stuff and been like, I just can't. And you're like, oh. And I think it's a sense of really finding those people. And when you find them, it's amazing. I have spoken to some people recently who I'm just like, I really want to work with you, not just because you're working with amazing clients, but I think them personally and what they do is exciting, and they want to do. They're really passionate about bringing different people up and working with different creatives and making new work. And interestingly enough, like the amount of, I think that idea of who's getting work at the moment is the smaller. There's a lot of freelance photographers are getting more work than ever, I think, compared to some of the big photo agencies who are deeply entrenched in the big creative agencies. So there's certainly an appetite for it. Just a case of like, you know, putting it in front of them and getting them to just kind of like work with you. But it's really tough. It's really tough. The hardest part of my job is getting conversations with people. And every email I send is a personalized one. So I've looked at them through LinkedIn. I've looked at work they've done. I've done my best to kind of show that I know who they are, and I have a grasp on the project they've done, the things they like, and share them relevant stuff, and feel that kind of like, you know, values that there's a crossover there, and you know, visually and the stand-up work we both like is there, and it's a lot of time and energy and research to send these, you know, like, I think my goal is like 500 emails a week.
Wow, that's
a
a
lot.
very high goal.
I mean, usually it's half that. One week I'll hit it. But I multiply myself. But that's the toughest bit of the job, is literally how do you get in a room with these people? And then sometimes you're in a room with these people and they're so uninterested. They're having the meeting because, it's an hour looking at some pictures rather than going through some emails. Yeah. So that's another, it's like getting in the room with people is great, but then, making sure you're in with the right people and having the right conversations, another thing. So yeah. But luckily we've been, I think, in terms of people we've met and collaborations we've done, we've been extremely lucky with the people we've worked with and met with and done this with. And I think you if you put an energy out there, and I kind of have to brand myself as well, which is quite hard and quite challenging, because I don't want to be seen as that guy on LinkedIn who talks about things. That's just gross. But you have to. How else are you going to communicate, right? Everyone's only like, how do you have these conversations? How do you? And luckily, energy we've put out there and the work we've put out there from our artists and the stories we've put out there from our artists, how we are as an agency, it's attracted the right people. And one of the things I've always said along, and it sounds corny as hell, but it's kind of like, build your own table and people will slowly pull up chairs. It will take a while for people to know you have a table, and they can, rather than trying to like queue up to get, the best restaurant in town, and like you could spend like 2 years on the waiting list and you can get there and it's slightly disappointing, because it always is.
Always.
It's never as you think it's going to be. And I think that's what I always say to photographers and creators and anyone. I'm like, you can dream of working with these people, but it's not always what you think it's going to be. So I think the better thing to do is build something and make something you're proud of and you love it and you're really passionate about it, and then people will gravitate towards you. The right people will. And then you can build your community out that way, and grow in a really authentic, natural way, rather than people who are wealthy, went to school with royals, and have all these connections, and these connections just happen because they're wealthy and privileged. Like, then it's just everyone blowing smoke up each other's asses, and it's like,
Yeah.
is it, and that's me being a little bit sassy, but I think it's all valid, and I think it's a sense of, if people don't want to work with me, fine. If you don't want to work with my artist, that's completely fine. I have no judgment on anyone who doesn't respond to me or doesn't want to work with us for whatever reason. But I'm more interested in working with the interesting people that do, and get excited by what we're doing. And yeah, so you kind of just have to learn to not take it to heart. But I
Yeah,
think
exactly.
I'm so good at tangents. You can literally say one thing and I can talk your butt off for about an hour on it.
No, we were talking about clients, and I think that's covered a lot of sort of different things I wanted to talk about as well. So definitely does answer the question. Can we go on the flip side of that and talk about your actual photographers? So you said you get quite a lot of photographers emailing you like weekly. How do you find the photographers? Is it pretty much from, the emails, like people contacting you, or do you go out there as well and find them?
I think the best. There are 3 artists on my roster who found me,
Okay.
and the rest who I kind of sort out. And those ones are really the ones that found me. I had calls with them, and I instantly. There's a way, I don't even know how to kind of articulate it. It's really tough. It's a feeling that you get, and you go, "Oh, this person's interesting." What I like to say to people is like, it's because I love food, right? I mean, I kind of want to look at photographs and go, like that tastes really good. Like
Yeah.
it's that spot of like, I'm not even like, it's nice, or like, oh, it grabs you in a certain way, and it does it so well. I mean, one of my photographers, Ollie, who is on he's just like, he got in contact with me, and then we had a chat, and we went through his commercial work and editorial work, and I was like, this is all really lovely. But what I'm interested in someone's personal body work. Like, do not send me pictures of campaigns. Like, it's lovely, great, but with enough time and skill, like anyone can do that. It's you can have your own distinct aesthetic, but
I guess the personal work is where you see their real point of view, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so connected, and I think often in the personal work is where people shine the most.
Mm-hmm.
And when Ollie's got a gorgeous project called Baba Father, which is like I'm obsessed with. I'm yet to kind of, when I hang out with Ollie in London, I'm yet to kind of get the book out and make him sign it because I think it's incredibly cringe, especially one of his agent. But like that, but that's how I feel. I'm a massive fan of his, and I asked him on the first, and he won't mind me saying this. We had a meeting, like a Google Meet call, and I was like, "This is great, but do you have anything personal?" And he showed me Baba Father, and I was almost in tears of how beautiful it was, and I was like, "This is stunning. This is so gorgeous. This is like what photographers should be striving to be like." And it's true. Like you can shoot the best commercial work all you want, but I don't think people are going to remember the commercial work. They're going to remember the other stuff. And it's fine if you don't want to be a photographer who shoots any personal work. Fine, you want to be a photographer for hire, just shoot commercial pictures, and they're really glossy and you love it. Great, but that's not what I'm interested in at all. I want to be able to work with people because my photographers, Ollie and other photographers, will be like, they'll give me snippets of what they're working on, personally. And Karabo Muki did it recently. There's a project coming out from him in July that's going to be published, which is going to be really exciting. And he showed me the whole series and the copy, and I literally I messaged him being like, "I'm crying here. It's so beautiful. It's such a deep, rich story." And I do that. I am a very emotional person. I cry at everything, but I do. But I don't often cry at photos. It seems kind of lame, crying at my artist's work. But those stories really grabbed me and were so arresting and so important. And it reinforces me going, yes, these are the people we should be working with. You should be working with people who are storytellers, who can, even if it's just like, you're trying to sell some shampoo, like whatever it is, having that person in the room who can add those little nuances and things to it that make it elevated, and it's really important. And it's the best kind of commercial work that I see is the stuff that could either hang on a gallery wall or be on a billboard.
Mm-hmm.
That work is the kind of work I like. It's the stuff that gets me really interested. So that's, and I always, when photographers, the big no-no is for a photographer to email me going, "I've looked at your roster and I think I'd be a great fit." Don't ever say that to me, because I'm always like, I go, "Oh wow!" I get really hyped up. I'm like, "Oh my god, I'm about to see something that," because I always have photographers in mind that I would love to join the roster, right? But I'm always, Joe McGowan, who's just joined our roster a month or so ago. I've been following him for like a year and a half, and it was only until the beginning of the year I went, right, I need to email this guy and have a conversation, because someone is going to swoop him up, because he's so talented, and he's one of those people who spends so much time shooting like these a lot of street photography, a lot of work with friends and different subcultures, and he's put so much hard work and time into it that you're just like, this is someone who works hard and has a good ethic and understands how to make an image. So I kind of, when people email me going, "I'd be a great fit," there's me going, "Oh my god, this could be the thing," because I look at my roster and I'm like, I always think, "Oh, it'd be good to have someone who can do something like this because they work really well here or that," and I can't. But then I'm like, "Oh well, I'll wait for it to come along. I'll wait for it, because I'm not going to go out and One of the biggest mistakes I made as an agent, which I've kind of stopped, was being like, "Oh, I really love their work, they're really great," and I signed them because I thought that they were. I thought the images were good and I liked them, but then it's kind of like, okay, but is that person right for you? And now I spend a lot more time essentially speaking to photographers, meeting up with them, talking about things they'd like to do, really just kind of gauging if we would gel. Because from past experience, there's nothing worse than bringing on photographers who you love their work, but then and it's nothing sort of negative to do with them at all. Not everyone can gel. Everyone has different ways of working.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that becomes challenging in a way that doesn't feel productive. And it, so I kind of I've learned to, I was very eager to bring on lots of people all the time and sort of grow the agency. But this is more of, and people look at who've been on the roster. I mean, out of the 6 we launched with, I think only 2 of them from when we first launched actually on. We had different people come and join. But that's also a natural kind of like lifespan of an agency when it starts. You do kind of like figure out who you want. So when photographers email me and how I find them is very much, a lot of it's got to be, I've got to find a connection, I've got to find a way in, I've got to like the person, they've got to like me. And I say to photographers all the time, like when you're looking at agencies or you're looking at places, even when you're going to creative directors, going to meetings to show your work, it's not them interviewing you, you're interviewing them as well. You're figuring out whether you want to work with them.
Of course, there's always that back and forth.
Yeah, and a lot of people feel like, well, I'm the person who's looking for the opportunity, and then give me the opportunity. And I'm like, well, no, they can make you look really you can make them look fucking great. So you can't live in that mentality of, I'm always, I'm here to kind of get, I'm here to kind of like get people's approval and get them to say, yes, I'm great, and join them and work with them. You're also figuring out, is that the type of person I want to work with? Am I going to get on with them? Is that, did I gel with them? Do they really respect my work? They talk about, all those other things that mean something and should have real value in conversations. It's something to really, and I reinforce it with everyone I talk to. I'm like, hey, look, this is, and I tell people how I work. I was like, look, like I'm gonna, if you're not picking up your camera and making work and doing new things when it's, I mean, a photographer, most photographers kind of think they get an agent and they'll start working right away. I mean, it's the same as kind of like actors in Hollywood, right? They're working like 20% of the time. And it's the same with photographers. You can, when I say working, I mean big paid commercial jobs. That's what I mean by working, like the jobs that kind of really, enable you to be fine for the next year or so. Like, yeah. It doesn't kind of like change dramatically. So it's finding someone. It's a two-way street on that process, and I take it quite slowly, and I do sometimes feel bad because I'm a bit like, photographers might want to move quicker and join and be front-facing and, bringing that journey of putting in front of people who I know and introducing to them. Yeah. But we also do things at the roster in the agency where we've got a really big community of artists who aren't signed on us. They're on a different contract where it's like, look, if you get work and you need support, we'll champion you and help you. If we get work in and a client's like, I've looked at your roster, I'm kind of looking for this, where can you help? I don't know if it's so specific, I'm not sure if it kind of works for you guys. Is there anyone you can recommend? And that happens quite a lot. People will come to me saying, do you know anybody? And I'm like, well, yeah, we do. We're a community. Like, we know loads of people. We've got loads of photographers people in. And that's something that I really love to do. I mean, everyone kind of knows my roster comes first, always in a given situation. But I always say to people, look, like, we have lots of other creatives and a lot of the time it's so specific, like they have to be in a certain country and, we can't fly your roster out, so we need someone here and it's a quick turn. So a lot of it is those type of conversations. But it's a real kind of like, it's a process figuring out who you want. I think what used to happen or still kind of happens is photographers, agents going, oh, well, they're really popular right now and they're not signed. I want them. That'll be good. We'll make loads of money off them. Great. But then I'm like, but what happens when they're not in vogue? What happens when you know, they have every kind of every way of working or aesthetic or whatever it may be has a shelf life. And I also think that's what I said earlier, why maybe the industry has more young people in it than, I don't know if it's like, is exclusive to this industry. It probably isn't, because I'm not in any other industries, I can't really compare it. But I was like, that's might be what they're studying with, and they go because they feel like they have that shelf life of their creative input. And I feel like I'd rather work with artists where I'm like, oh my god, we can grow, we can do things together, we can make different things, and you know, and that's to me, that to me is more interesting, and I think it's a better way of working with artists, and I think it's being that supportive and collaborative. I essentially tell my artists I'm their Uncle Buck, and I'm just on the weekends I'm Uncle Buck. I'm like, just whatever it is. And then also one of the things that we also do is, I mean, we do. That sounds really kind of arrogant, but there's a lot of kind of like pastoral care as well. There's a lot of you know, these are people who have lives, and things happen in these people's lives, and there's things that happen in my life that I'm like, oh shit, this thing's happened, or it could be amazing, could be really bad, and we all talk to each other about these things, and I think it's really important. I need to know if my photographer is, you know, if their mental health isn't great. I need to know, you know, where they're at, how I can help. Like, all right, well, for the next couple of weeks, I'm not gonna. What do you want from me? Should I put you forward for this? Where should we? What should our working relationship be? Because it needs to change because you're going through some stuff. So there's a lot of that as well, and I mean that, and that's not unique to us. Every good agency should do that. Like, it's not wholly original for me to say that, but it's also part of the job that I think it's the one part of the job I wasn't expecting. But
How have you like got to know what to do in those situations then?
my boyfriend works in diversity inclusion, so if there's anything that comes up that I feel I am not capable of tackling, I mean, and it's only happened a few times where I've been like, oh my god, I don't think I'm not qualified to, but I am, you know, but I'm. There comes a point where you switch off agent, and you know, the friend part of me comes in.
Yeah.
I can't. It's that weird thing where I'd love to say I'm friends with all of my photographers, and we all get on, but also like we're also colleagues, and we're also, I'm their agent, and also, you know, there's lots of different.
Fine line.
There's I mean, but then it's like, is it a fine line? Is it a case that you're all these things at once, and it's complex? But it's also like, we're not going for drinks all the time, or we're not on the phone all the time. We're not, when, you know, it's and obviously there are. I mean, weekends are for memes only. I'm like, unless there's a project going on, send me memes or funny stuff that you've seen or things you're doing that you want to share me. Fine. Or if I see things that reminds me of them that I know they'll laugh at, great, send it across. But like, yeah, it's really, and it's a lot of the time I think agents would kind of like just interact solely on work or basis. And I mean, in the past, and that's kind of like when I've had to let photographers go, or they've decided, you know, it wasn't working. It's tough because you kind of go, oh god, like, you know, really connect with that person. We've got on really well. It's just that, you know, they wanted different things. They need different things as a creative. And I couldn't quite, you know, do that for them, or vice versa. But I didn't think they were. I didn't think I was right for them, and that's completely fine. I think there's a level of kind of like maturity that I think you really need to have, of being like, nothing's ever personal, like, because you can look back on something and go, oh god, like, you know, I wish they stayed, or I wish I was still in touch with them. But nothing's ever personal. Most people I work with, I'm like, doors always open for you to come and chat to me if you need my help. I will help majority of people. Biggest failure, biggest thing to work on. I help too many people. I'm like, my boyfriend's like, could you please stop? Like, who is this photographer? How do you know them? Why are you doing their brief for them? And like, I was like, yeah, we're going to work together. He's like, no, stop it. So that's something which I've reeled in a lot this year. It's been one of those things from like, slow that down. But I think it's about but that just comes from my own personal experience of the industry, where there's so much gatekeeping and people aren't helping and people aren't engaging in that way. And you kind of go, you want to be the kind of like anti-venom to it, but also you're also only one person. So you have to kind of regulate how much you can kind of put out there for people.
Yeah. I mean, I can see you're really passionate about it. What's your favourite part of the job?
Every now and then you take stock. And I think it's something that I've only sort of started to do every kind of like 6 months or a couple of months or so. I stop and go, where was I pandemic? Working. I mean, I started Darwin because the only ways I could run Darwin was my mum was able to, put me up and pay minimal rent. And then I was working part-time in a shop. And then all that money went into like running Darwin. So like I think reflection and that the best part of the job is seeing how far you've come, but also the journey you're on with your artists where they're working so hard, you're working so hard, the job comes in that you've really wanted to get together, and you look back and you see their growth. I mean, everyone matures and changes over time, and I love to see that through a creative kind of prism. And it's nice to be kind of like, the person behind the curtain, kind of like enabling that and helping that, but also not taking credit because, they're talented. They are the ones with the talent and the skill. I come in and just probably downplaying what I do a bit, but it's also true. It's like you can't take all the credit. It's them. They're amazing. They're super talented. And then I pick up in the places where they're not great at. Or who the fuck wants to do admin? No one. But so yeah, I think that and the real kind of like, and I think some of the, especially I think recently some recent work that Karaba has done in particular, and Maury Hulk and Cairo on our roster. Just from some of the project they've shown me, like in private, and you're kind of being, they're choosing to share it because I'm their agent and I work with them, but there's a level of trust and privilege that goes into a creative saying, look at this, and you're like, oh my god, it's amazing, can't wait to see it, it's so good. And then you kind of like pretend it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Like you can't talk about it. Like no one needs to know this. But yeah, it's an incredibly lucky and privileged job to do. It's incredibly tough. I mean, I had a full line of hair when I started. It's receded and thin, and it has. Like when people see like you look older, I'm like, yeah, it's the stress. It's incredibly stressful and hard work. I mean, I can't exaggerate how tough it is to do it. And you're doing it on your own. But also, it's like the work with the artists and also the community and the people. I've met some amazing people who are in regular contact, asking how it's going and putting me up for stuff and getting involved. So yeah, it's all kind of luck and chance, but it's all kind of good to kind of be in that position.
Yeah. You know what? It's been a really interesting chat. I definitely have learned some things about photography agents and the kind of intricacies of how it all works, which I didn't know before. So thank you so much for opening my eyes on that. Thanks for listening to Get to Know. I hope you enjoyed this episode where I learned that not only do photo agents help get the photographers the work, but also are their personal support and champion of personal projects. I love hearing about the community that Harry has built up through Darwin. If you did too, please leave a review, rate and subscribe for more episodes like it. If you want to learn more, follow us on TikTok and Instagram at the Get to Know Podcast, and I'll catch you the same time next week, where I'm getting to know Leah Whitty, a freelance photographer who doesn't believe in settling for just one niche. If you're into fashion, beauty, travel and yoga, you won't want to miss this one.